Welcome, friend. This is I Need Thee Every Hour, a podcast dedicated to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. You are listening to your ministering sister, Casey Mills. Hello. When I was preparing for this episode, I actually had something completely different in mind. And as usual, the Lord has his own plan. And because I am dedicating this podcast to him and I am addressing things that he wants me to address, I completely had to switch gears and do something completely different. But I do feel like this is a timely subject. This is not something new, nothing that we haven't already heard about, had on our faces. I just think the adversary finds continuously new and shocking ways to attack our divine nature. And when I say our nature, our divine nature, I am specifically referring to women. And what came into my mind was something that I've always been taught, even from a little one, going to church, about this idea of the divine nature of women. And I will say that being a girl, being a woman, while not always easy to deal with the struggles that come from womanhood and everything that everything that comes with it, I never doubted myself in that way. I never felt like, well, maybe I'm not meant to be this way. Now, I will say one thing that I did experience was, even though I love children just as much as the next person, and I did do my fair share of babysitting as a teenager and that kind of a thing. But I actually had a plan to be a singer. I wrote songs. I loved performing. I even had a band with my sister and my brother. I even as a young kid, my whole family, all 8 of us, we performed as a family. And I just loved singing and I loved being on stage. And I really thought that was what I was here to do, was to share my love of music and my talent and perform. And, I felt like, well, God gave me this desire, this, I never even felt nervous getting on stage. I did not experience butterflies in my stomach. Still to this day, I feel so comfortable performing in front of groups, and I don't know. I just love it. I just love to sing. I'm not the greatest singer by any means or the greatest songwriter, but I really love it. And anyway, that's what I was going to do for my career. I figured at some point I would get married and have kids. I knew that I would, but that was my goal. I wanted to do music. And I've talked with my daughters about this, about how I have since learned that the music industry is not what I thought it was. I think there are people who are trying to change the music industry and make it better, make it not so corrupt. There are people who fight against it. Certainly there's many different genres of music, but I just know that for me, and I was confused for a while why the Lord didn't want me to do that as a career and have that be my focus. It just wasn't meant to be for me, and I have no regrets. I know that the Lord had a higher and holier calling for me, and that being a mother, being a wife and a mother, is something that I really needed to put all of my heart and soul into. And if I was doing music, it just wouldn't. That would have been my priority, and I know that. And I feel no bitterness about that. I still get to sing in church. I can perform whenever I want to, if I chose to do that. I actually wrote a song that I've been able to perform, and others have been able to perform the song in church settings and religious settings. It was a song that I felt I was inspired to write by the Lord, and anyway, and it's touched so many hearts, and it's brought in the Spirit, and I just feel like, well, the Lord. I have lots of talents and abilities and lots of opportunities to share the gospel, and music is just one way. I taught music to little kids in my church. I was the choir director for my church choir for a period of time. Loved that, and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that if I wasn't an active member in my church, or if I had been, in the music industry, steeped in the music industry. But the more I see of the music industry, the more I see how Satan has very much infiltrated it. And so I'm glad that I didn't sell my soul, as it were, to be involved in that. I see that it was merciful, that the Lord protected me from that, and instead gave me an amazing opportunity to be a mother, for one, to be a wife also. The thought that I had about this to start from, I mean, sure, I could get right into being a woman and what it means to be a woman and the nature of being a woman, but I thought I got to back up a little bit more and say, well, what is the purpose or goal of this life that we are in right now? Why are we even here? Forget gender, okay? What's the purpose of life? Well, my thought was, okay, even if you don't believe in God, okay, at some point in your life, you're going to wonder. You're going to say, why am I here? I have a brain. I have consciousness. What am I doing here? What's the reason for it? And I think a lot of people, once they truly dive into that, it inevitably leads you to God. Because without that, where do we have a foundation? Where do we have a baseline? If we're just nebulous beings here, then what's the point in getting married and having kids and focusing on a career and trying to be good people, trying to be good citizens, following and obeying laws? There really is no reason. Why not just do whatever the hey you want? Well, we know even unbelievers of God, I think. I mean, unless you have mental illness, I suppose, or you really just don't have any morals whatsoever, I think inevitably it leads you to God, because that's where we find our purpose. That's where we find our goals in life. And I love this quote here on the website for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It says, "What is the purpose of my life? Life has purpose and meaning. God, our loving Father, wants us to find happiness and joy. He created a plan for us to grow, live by faith, and return to live with Him someday. God's plan, often called the plan of salvation, gives meaning and context to our life here on earth by answering the big questions like, where did I come from? Why am I here? And what happens after I die?" I think a lot of times people don't want to face these things until they lose a loved one. And the grief that comes from that, and wondering, well, where did they go? Why am I still here, but I don't see them anymore? Maybe you even feel like they're around. Well, how is that possible? Or maybe you feel like they're gone from you and you can't feel them or see them, and you don't know you're assuming you'll never see them again. Well, why would that be? I have a favorite Judge Judy quote. She says, "If it doesn't make sense, it isn't true." And I love that because I'm just like, yes, that's how I feel about it. It doesn't make sense that we would be here for no reason. It doesn't make sense that when we die, we just poof, we're gone. It doesn't make sense. Why would we have these relationships? Why would we feel these feelings? Why would we have these goals? Why would we want to do anything in this life if it wasn't something that's innate? Something that, okay, even if you don't want to believe that it comes from God, well, it comes from somewhere. But it's worth seeking out. It's worth researching and trying to find the truth. And I know that inevitably it does lead to God. And why wouldn't it? Because he's the one who created us. He's the one who created our world and put us here. I had a thought about, okay, so there's our purpose here just as people here on earth, okay? Okay, so now let's then say, as women, okay, so you're a woman, okay? Do you have great purpose as a woman? Do you have great purpose as an individual? Because womanhood and motherhood looks a little different depending on who you are. Some women want to have careers. Some women don't. Some women want to be at home raising children. Some women don't have the opportunity to do that. I was thinking of someone specifically, her name is Sherry Dew. Now, she was so for a period of time, she was the second counselor in the Relief Society General Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So that's just a lot of words to say that she was a prominent religious figure, and had a role, a higher role to play in the church, in the church leadership. And yes, women have roles and leadership roles in our church too. It's not just men. But she was such an amazing example. I say was, sorry. She's still alive. I don't mean to make it sound like she's passed. She's had so many great insights, and this is someone who never did get married and never did have children. And she's been very candid about her experiences with that and how that has made her feel. Understandably, because when you belong to a church that very much supports the idea of marriage and child rearing, and you are in a prominent role, and you're supposed to be teaching women and all the members of the church about womanhood, and you weren't blessed in this life to have the opportunity to be married and have children, that would be hard. I know she's expressed that she kind of felt unqualified, and also felt hurt, like, well, why didn't I, get this blessing? She gave this really awesome talk back in October of 2001 entitled, "Are We Not All Mothers?" And I just wanted to read this brief part. She starts out saying, "This summer, 4 teenage nieces and I," so these are her four of her nieces, she said. They were teenagers. She said, "This summer, 4 teenage nieces and I shared a tense Sunday evening when we set out walking from a downtown hotel in a city we were visiting to a nearby chapel where I was to speak. I had made that walk many times, but that evening we suddenly found ourselves engulfed by an enormous mob of drunken parade goers. It was no place for 4 teenage girls, or their aunt, I might add. But with the streets closed to traffic, we had no choice but to keep walking. Over the din, I shouted to the girls, "Stay right with me." As we maneuvered through the crush of humanity, the only thing on my mind was my niece's safety. She goes on to say, "Thankfully, we made it to the chapel, but for one unnerving hour, I better understood how mothers who forego their own safety to protect a child must feel. My siblings had entrusted me with their daughters, whom I love, and I would have done anything to lead them to safety. Likewise, our Father has entrusted us as women with his children, and he has asked us to love them and help lead them safely past the dangers of mortality back home." I just wanted to skip ahead. She says, "Have you ever wondered why prophets have taught the doctrine of motherhood? And it is doctrine. I have. I have thought long and hard about the work of women of God, and I have wrestled with what the doctrine of motherhood means for all of us. This issue has driven me to my knees, to the scriptures, and to the temple, all of which teach an ennobling doctrine regarding our most crucial role as women. It is a doctrine about which we must be clear if we hope to stand steadfast and immovable regarding the issues that swirl around our gender. For Satan has declared war on motherhood. He knows that those who rock the cradle can rock his earthly empire, and he knows that without righteous mothers loving and leading the next generation, the kingdom of God will fail." She goes on to say, "Motherhood is more than bearing children. Though it is certainly that. It is the essence of who we are as women. It defines our very identity, our divine stature and nature, and the unique traits our Father gave us." Why I loved that so much is because I started thinking about the ways that I was put in a nurturing or mothering, if you will, type role before I even had my own children. Maybe I was helping I had a niece when I was only 11 is when she was born. My oldest sister had my little niece. And I had this feeling toward her like she belonged to me, even though I knew she didn't, right? I knew I wasn't her mother, but I recognized that this feeling I had toward her was motherly. And I would have done anything to protect her and care for her. And my sister often allowed me to babysit her. And I remember feeling like, oh my goodness, she's not even my actual child. And I already feel this way toward her. I can't even imagine like how much more I could feel toward my own children. And I remember having similar kinds of feelings when I was teaching music to the young children at my church, because I developed a love for all of those kids, and I wanted them to share their testimony through music, and I wanted them to sing their best, and I wanted them to learn of their Father in heaven and their brother, Jesus Christ, through the music that I was teaching them at church. And I was also thinking about when I was asked by the Lord to move out of state to remarry, and he promised me that my kids would come with me at some point, right? But I was told to move ahead of getting all of that in place. And my husband, as I've mentioned, my stepdaughter, she was very young. She was only 4 when he and I got married. And, obviously she had a mother, but when she was with us, I needed to be her mother at that time. I needed to mother her, I guess is how I should say it. And there were times when that was really hard for me because I felt like, well, I'm here mothering her, but I have my own children that need my mothering, and I'm not able to do that because they're not living with me. But I knew that my stepdaughter still needed that from me. And the Lord really blessed me to see one very crucial thing that he has reminded me time and again is that my kids, even though I birthed them and I feel like they're mine and I'm supposed to be nurturing them and raising them, but he's reminded me time and again that they are his. We're all spirit brothers and sisters. We're all here in this temporary state, in this life, and I'm supposed to feel these feelings toward my kids. I'm supposed to feel these feelings toward my nieces and nephews and toward any children that I have stewardship over. Any child. I mean, I don't care who you are. When you're a woman and let's say you see a kid at the park and they fall, get hurt, you want to run to them and help them find their mom, help them feel better. Like that is something that is innate in us. That's something that is the divine nature that we have in us, that we are supposed to be tapping into. And that's not to say that men aren't capable of feeling that way or being nurturing. And they are, and they do. But just like, the thought that I had is that we have our jobs here, right, on this earth, and the men have their job, okay, and one doesn't take from the other, and one doesn't negate the other, and certainly I could say I can use a hammer and a nail, and I know how to use a screwdriver, and I mean, it's just like, okay, sure, yeah. And my husband knows how to cook too, and do dishes, but and we both have this symbiotic relationship, but yet we both are trying our best to hone into what is God's intent for me. What is my role in God's kingdom? Well, right now, my role is to be an at-home mom and to be raising my kids and being a homemaker, okay? I know that that's not the way it's going to be forever. Eventually my kids are going to have their own lives outside of my home. And then what am I going to do with myself? Well, there are lots of other things that I can be doing with myself. I have goals and ambitions. I have things that I want to do with myself, not the least of which is that I want to help take care of my grandkids one day. I'm so excited to do that one day. But I can't do all of that on my own. I could try. Certainly I could make things work. I've done that before. I was a single mom. I did that, but it was really hard. It was really hard. It wasn't very fun. Not that things are supposed to be fun, but it's just like having this situation that I have now with my husband, who's my best friend, and we can commiserate together and we can do what we do together and handle everything that we need to handle, and we do it together. He has his strengths and I have my strengths, and when we come together, that's what I was going to say. So she has another cool talk that I wanted to share. It says, it's entitled, "It is not good for man or woman to be alone," and this was also from October 2001. It says, she says, as another Sherry Do talk. She said, "This summer I injured a shoulder and lost the use of an arm for weeks. I hadn't realized how much one arm depends upon the other for balance, or how much less I could lift with one arm than two, or that there were some things I couldn't do at all. This disability not only renewed my respect for those who deal so well with a physical limitation, but helped me to realize how much more two arms working together can do." She said, "Two are usually better than one, as our Father confirmed when he declared that it was not good that man should be alone, and made a helpmeet for Adam, someone with distinct gifts who would who would give him balance, help him shoulder the burdens of mortality, and enable him to do things that he couldn't do alone. For neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man in the Lord. And that is a scripture reference from the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 11:11. It says, nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man in the Lord. Okay? I had a thought when I was writing down what I wanted to say regarding this idea. Today, my 4-year-old was wanting to practice riding a 2-wheel bike with pedals. He has a Strider bike he can ride, but a 2-wheel bike with pedals is something that his 6-year-old big brother can ride, and he wanted to ride his bike. And so he was practicing, and his big brother was being an example, showing him how to do it. He would take a ride around and show him what it's supposed to look like, and he gave a lot of encouragement. It was super cute. And then combined with his dad's strength and guidance, he was standing there ready to catch the bike if it fell, or hold on to him, make sure that he knew he was there, and to kind of tell him what to do along the way. And I just thought, that was something that he chose to do. That was something that my little 4-year-old said, I want to ride this bike. And certainly we could say to him, well, you don't need to do that, right? Riding a bike isn't a critical thing to learn how to do in life. I mean, I could have said, well, or my husband could have said, well, I know how to ride a bike. I'll just ride it for you. I'll just ride a bike and have you sit on my bike, or I'll pull you in the bike trailer. You don't even need to learn how to ride. No, yeah, you don't need to do that. I'll do it for you. Well, that sounds a bit nutty, doesn't it? To even think that, to even consider that. Should we not be teaching our kids to do things that they want to do, or learn how to do things that they should be learning how to do? Certainly, I could do all the cooking in my house, and it would be more efficient and cleaner, and whatever all else. But do I want my kids to learn how to cook meals for themselves? Well, of course. I don't want them going out into the world and not knowing how to boil noodles properly. I mean, come on, right? This is what we're supposed to be doing. Well, okay, we'll take it a step further. Why would God send children to me in this life, knowing that I'm imperfect, knowing I'm going to make mistakes? Why would he do that? He could do it way better than me, right? He knows all of us. He is the perfect parent. Why send us here? Why put me in this position where I'm going to fail? I'm going to screw things up. There's a parable of the 10 virgins. They are told to fill their lamps with oil in preparation for the bridegroom to come, and gather them for the party, let's just say. And we are supposed to liken the story of the 10 virgins to ourselves. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but I'm trying to paraphrase and say we are supposed to be preparing ourselves. We are supposed to be filling our lamps with oil. We're supposed to be gaining knowledge. We are supposed to be growing and becoming who we are meant to be here on this earth. And that consists of doing hard things, obeying the Lord, having faith, saying, well, whatever it is that I'm supposed to be doing here, I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm going to do it anyway because I want to be obedient. I want to fill my lamp with oil and be ready when Christ comes again, because I want to be with my God again. I want to live with my Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother and my big brother again. And even more so, I want all of my loved ones to join me there, right? Especially my children. So Why does he give that as an example? Well, because he can't do it for us, and I can't do it for my kids. I can try to learn all the lessons for them and just regurgitate it and, like a mama bird, and force it down their throats, right? I could try to do that to them, and I'm not saying that I don't try to do that. But in the end, they have to have their own experiences. They have to learn some things the hard way. Hopefully they will listen to me when it matters, but I know that there will be plenty of times where they won't. Just the same as I didn't listen to my mom sometimes, or I'm not listening to the Lord sometimes. We all have to go through these experiences, and we all have to kind of learn things the hard way, develop our own testimonies, because when it comes down to it, we have to have our own lamp and our own oil in there. I won't be able to give my lamp to my children. They have to have their own. And when you think about it in that way and you say, okay, this is why I'm here. This is why my children are here. Who is it that wants to take this opportunity from us? Who is it that first said, I'll just force everybody to do what I want them to do? Well, that was not our Father in heaven. That was not Jesus' plan. That was the adversaries. And so when I try to do that to my children, who am I being like? I'm being like the adversary. I have to guide them lovingly. I have to give them the opportunity to make mistakes and to make their own decisions. And it's not going to be easy. Nothing in this life is easy. But knowing these things that I know and these things that I've learned, while it doesn't make things easier, it makes them more simple. It's less confusing. It's less of a struggle. These don't have to be mysteries. We can have this knowledge. We can have this certainty in our hearts and say, well, I am doing what the Lord wants me to do on this earth. I'm learning what he wants me to learn. It will continue. Just as soon as I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of this, something happens and I'm got to learn something new. When we know who we are and where we come from, it makes everything crystal clear. Not easier, but more simple.